So without further ado, I don't like slides a whole lot, so we're just going to go hop into things. Today, I wanted to give you guys an overview of SharePoint in general, as well as show you guys some of the BI things that you can do inside of here. I know this right here looks like it's going to be super exciting because I'm going to go through some installation stuff with you. Promise it's not going to be very much. I just want to give you guys a little bit of insight into how SharePoint works and then kind of go into the BI side of things. So whenever you get ready to install SharePoint, you have two options, the standalone and the farm. For purposes of this, we're always going to go the farm route. So on when you come up with this screen here, always choose the farm installation. The other thing that you're going to have the option to do once you do that is you're going to have the option to do a complete installation or a standalone installation. The difference between those two is one of them is only going to be using SQL Server 2008 Express Edition. The other one is going to be built off of SQL Server. You always want to go with complete in order to get the full feature set and to be able to use all these BI things that we're going to talk about today. The other thing is once you get done going through the wizard here, you're going to come up with this screen at the very end, and it's called Run the Configuration Wizard. You have obviously a little checkbox right here that you guys can hopefully see that's going to allow you to run this configuration wizard. And this is the main thing that I want to show you guys with the whole installation piece. I don't want to sit here and waste your hour showing you how to install SharePoint, but this is an important piece.
Hey, Brad.
Now,
hate to interrupt you, but can you speak a little louder? We're getting several requests for you to speak up a tiny bit.
Sure, I will see what I can do about that.
Okay, and also if you are not seeing Brad's slide deck, that is a GoToMeeting glitch, and if you log out and log back in, it should fix it.
Also, fair warning for you guys, as I start doing demos and stuff in here, I am doing this demo from a hotel room, since I am on site with one of my clients right now. They were nice enough to let me step out for a little while to do this webinar with you guys. So if things do lag behind a little bit and I'm going a little bit too fast for what you guys are actually seeing there, please, by all means, just let me know and I will try my best to slow down a little bit for you. So as far as the SharePoint Products and Technologies Configuration Wizard goes, the main thing that you're going to want to do here, there's two ways to install SharePoint, with PowerPivot and without PowerPivot. Now, you can always go back in and add the PowerPivot stuff into the SharePoint installation later on, but if anybody out there has ever done that, you'll quickly find that it's a little bit of a pain in the neck to go back and add the PowerPivot stuff into SharePoint. So generally what I'll end up doing is if you uncheck this little box here, you can actually run through the SQL Server installation and then launch into this configuration wizard from after the SQL Server install. And what that will do is go ahead and configure all the PowerPivot stuff for you whenever you do the installation. If you keep that checkbox done there and click close and run the wizard now, you'll have to go back and add the PowerPivot information later on, and that can get a little bit hairy. So that's really the only thing I really wanted to get you guys to see inside of here. If you do run this now, you have to add PowerPivot later, kind of can be troublesome. Or if you uncheck this and you run this wizard as a result of doing a PowerPivot installation from the SQL Server install, then things go much smoother. But you do get kind of a little bit of a trade-off, and I'll show you kind of the bad side of doing it through the SQL Server installation. I think those are the only ones I need to show you here. Okay, and we'll come back to this screen. You'll actually see this. I'm going to try to show you guys this section here. Once you get done running through that installation wizard, or the configuration wizard for SharePoint, you'll be asked to create a new site, and this is what that screen is going to look like for you. So we'll hop over here into a virtual machine that I've got set up. This has already got an existing installation of SQL Server 2008 R2. Like I said, I don't actually have the 2012 one on this machine, but we'll open up Management Studio here, and we'll talk a little bit about the architecture behind this and why using that, using the PowerPivot installation through SQL Server is not always the best idea. So whenever you do create the PowerPivot installation for doing a SharePoint, you're going to end up with a PowerPivot instance. So if we go over here to our database, and we'll talk about the PowerPivot instance here in a little while, when we actually start talking about the service applications in PowerPivot, because PowerPivot's a pretty important one here in this case. Okay, so you'll notice here that we've got a bunch of content databases, and content databases are always something that drives SharePoint in the background. So anytime that you upload data, upload an Excel file, upload a Word document or a Visio sheet, create a new list, any of that kind of stuff, it always ends up here in these content databases. We have SharePoint Content, SharePoint Config, Admin, it's your store service, and then you got a couple other ones that get created by miscellaneous service accounts like Performance Point and PowerPivot. So the problem that you'll notice pretty quickly with these is that these database names are not at all friendly. So you'll notice that we have SharePoint config D034821B, blah, 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 blah. So you get the database name with a giant GUID on the end of it. And that's bad for a ton of reasons as far as naming conventions for your database go, not to mention trying to decide if you have multiple content databases in here, trying to figure out which one of these you actually need to be looking at and backing up and doing that kind of stuff. It can just be a nightmare. So anytime, and this one was set up, like I said, doing the SQL Server installation with PowerPivot to set up my SharePoint environment. So a couple of issues with that. One, the GUID's on the end of the name here, and two, it goes underneath this PowerPivot instance of SQL Server. So again, if any of you guys out there have ever used PowerPivot for PowerPivot in SharePoint 2010, occasionally things get corrupted, and a lot of times it's easier to just uninstall the PowerPivot instance and start over with PowerPivot. The problem with that is whenever you run through the installation for PowerPivot inside SQL Server, you have to create an instance of analysis services called PowerPivot. And if your databases are already on an instance called PowerPivot, the SQL Server installation is not smart enough to say, hey, I've got a database instance but not an analysis services instance, so you end up having, it won't let you create just the analysis services, so you have to wipe out this localhost PowerPivot instance, which, as you can see here, contains all your content databases. So that ends up being quite the issue for you there. So you have to end up doing a bunch of backups and recoveries and all that kind of stuff. So as far as the recovery model, definitely not great to go through the SQL Server installation. If you go through the regular installation wizard, then you can actually tell it what instance you want all these content databases to be on, which you can put it on another server if you want to, or keep it on the same server, just don't put it on the PowerPivot instance, and then you don't get these nasty GUIDs on the end of each one of these database names. So it's much, much cleaner and much better for maintenance and overall best practice as far as databases go.